All right, we went a little long on Intercut 102, but we still wanted to hit our topic of the week because the Snyder Cut is out. Zack Snyder's Justice League hit HBO Max, closing one of the strangest chapters in recent Hollywood history. The 4-hour-long cut restored the filmmaker's vision for the superhero meetup movie, and personally, I'm a little less interested in discussing the merits or shortcomings of the movie than I am in just discussing the movie's existence, talking about that, because there's so much to discuss and what it means and what its impact might be. If you're looking for a more traditional review, Art has his video up on Let Me Explain with more thoughts, but I wanted to start this off with one of the unexpected outcomes of this whole re-release, the film's generally positive reception from critics. Zack Snyder's Justice League currently sits at 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, well above the 29% that the previous film Batman v Superman got, or even the 40% that the theatrical cut of Justice League got. So, Amanda, let me ask you first. We knew folks tweeting "Release the Snyder Cut" would enjoy this movie. Were you surprised by the seemingly widespread warm reaction to Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect when that came out. I was just surprised at the sheer number of people who decided to watch it at all. Like, I just kind of expected the discourse around it to be so heavy that people were like, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to think about it. I don't even want to venture to have an opinion because of all of the people that are so heavily invested in it. Like, there could have been an hour of this that was just Zack Snyder walking through a scene burping, and some people would defend it. So, like,
5 stars, bro.
You know, exactly. It's like visionary. So it's like, it was a very daunting
in
movie
slow-mo.
Yeah, exactly.
The burp is in
slow-mo. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. And you know, and to the perfect aspect ratio. So it would have been really hard for solid discourse to come out around it. But
views,
I do think that it has a lot more charm. I'll be completely honest. I haven't had a chance to completely finish it yet because I got access to it just as this film festival was starting. So this is conceivably the first day I've been able to really watch it. So I'm about halfway through, and there are parts that I do like a lot more.
Splitting it into episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, unintentionally. But I'm definitely surprised by the positive reactions, but I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful that people aren't just going into it being like, this is trash, this is crap. Like, I have a lot of issues with some of Snyder's choices over the board in all of his movies, almost. Just issues with character portrayals and things like that. So I'm not going to be one of these flip ones being like, oh, Zack Snyder's a genius. But there was clearly a lot that went on with this movie that was very wrong, and I'm glad that the full version is out there for the people that want to see it. I don't know if it needed to be 4 hours, but I guess I'm not done yet, so maybe I don't know. But
Art, what do you think? 3.5 stars from RogerEbert.com and Matt Zoller Stites, positive reviews in Vanity Fair and in Vulture. It is only at 55 on Metacritic, but it's still, I think, more positive than at least I was expecting, given that there's been a lot of angst around the potential of this movie's release.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised because I don't know what it fixed for them that they didn't already have problems with. Like Amanda said, a lot of the people's problems were his portrayal of the characters. Like, if you don't like Batman killing, I don't think that had fully changed as much as it is now. You see how he got the weapon, you know, like, I don't think that changes what the initial critique was for some people. I do understand it. I get it. I think that they're all fictional characters, and as someone who understands the lore of Batman, I could see it being broken. I could see it being used as something else, you know? What's his name made The Last Temptation of Christ? I don't think that is by the book. Nonetheless, he's open to his interpretation of it, but it seems that you get more crucified depending on what superheroes you touch. I think it's an interesting way to look at it because a lot of people felt that it was only going to be the fans who were going to give it positive reviews. Like you said, I don't think as many people have changed their minds on it as it has been just seeing the improvements that went from Justice League to all the stuff that was missing. I wonder if BVS, the Ultimate Cut, would have had a rating on, I don't know if it has one on Metacritic, but I don't believe it has one on Rotten Tomatoes. Would that change the 20-something% that it has? Because it answers a lot of the questions that they may not had in the theatrical version. Well, we just did that for Justice League, but they're two separate entities. You know, one's Justice League, one's Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I mean, it's a positive thing for them. I think the critical reception is just a bonus add-on to the fact that the movement already got their feature. It's very clear that there is it's very clear it's going to continue. You know, a lot of people didn't, you know, the argument was, is there a cut? Is there not a cut? I didn't realize how annoying that argument was either. The argument of it never existing, kaput. It's here. It's now a reality. Talk your talk.
Well, no, I mean, it wasn't finished. It's not like it was sitting on a shelf.
Yeah, I think they just mean that there was footage there.
There was
other
footage
than a couple
that
things
was
added.
getting rid of. Yeah. Obviously, there's still effects and all that. But that's what I'm saying. I was like, that's always going to be an argument. How much was shot? How much wasn't? Getting all these different quotes from people. But at the end of the day, the idea that it was never going to come out, it's out. So now it's the trilogy, which is really 5 parts, which I also found funny. This stuff is so funny, but it's become a thing where it's like, you got to be one side or the other. You either have to be for him and take all of his flubs or be completely against him and belittle him for anything. Look, I think that this proves they already put 70 mil to just finish up the effects and shoot the extra scenes that I didn't think needed to be in it. You'll see, Amanda.
No.
But they're in it for a reason, and that's because I think they saw the trajectory to this, and you're adding the critic perspective to it as well. They're going to finish 2 and 3. I don't see how they're not. All of this has been set up for a bigger story arc, and the man knows it. The man shot it and added the scenes that he needed to because he knows he's going to come back and be able to tweak it. I personally think that with the streaming services, and I know you want to talk about the length and the idea of like more director's cuts and such.
Yeah.
Because of streaming, I think we will. We've seen Tarantino do it with The Hateful Eight, being able to split up his movie in a longer version through a miniseries. I think that that's going to be a new outlet, not only to get director's cuts, but to be able to flesh out bigger things. Personally, I feel like when it's within the system of the studio, they have always turned the movie into a series, you know, or turned the series into a movie. But now, I guess, depending on the fans, depending on how big the filmmaker themselves can push it, they'll be able to have a different cut of their movie that kind of extends stuff. But again, there's also more meddling that happened in a situation like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, that's maybe one of the most fascinating things about this, you know, because whether you think it's a good movie or a bad movie, I think one of the things that's funny is a lot of people who like it and dislike it both agree that it is overlong, super long, whatever word you want to use, but also be a much more coherent movie than the theatrical cut before it. And to me, I think that's ultimately why, or maybe not the only reason, but a large reason why it's been getting this warm reception is people have a worse version of this movie to look to.
Yeah.
They can compare it to a version that nobody wanted and recognize that even if this isn't like a version for everybody, it is a version for somebody. Mm-hmm. So there is that added benefit there, but there's also, as you were saying, there's this 4-hour thing, which personally I feel like there's no way that this film, if it was released into theaters like this, would be getting this kind of positive reception. 4 hours is a huge ask in movie theaters, but it's not a huge ask at home, at streaming, where it's easy to take a break, it's easy to pause it, and
Endgame
not
was 3.
miss a chunk of the movie. Yeah, but Endgame is the culmination of all these different movies. Endgame is even the second half of a movie. It is a sequel.
Snyder Cut's the Endgame has that build up to the movement, getting what they of 2 movies. But nonetheless, it's the hype that's around.
The other thing is that there's
12.
There's 12 Marvel movies that have grossed more money than any DC movie. So, or at least the movies in the Zack Snyder catalog. Mm-hmm. So I think it's different with Endgame. I know people want to keep comparing it to Endgame, but it is different with Endgame.
Well, lengthwise,
I do not think that you'd get the casual fan to show up for a 4-hour movie.
I agree with you. It's because people are watching it at home that they're giving it the time of day who usually would have not critiqued it, usually would have not reviewed it. But theatrical is completely different. You know, when streaming, there is no slots, showtimes, revenue shares that you need to be doing. There is no intermission cuts that you're adding in the middle of the film so people could take a bathroom break, which then means less things on a screen.
You have to do that with this.
Exactly. So with streaming, I think that's the interesting part of the conversation, where what other projects in the future will pivot to have a streaming thing to be able to have more creative freedom for what they want to tell, as opposed to it having to be cut for a theatrical release. Well, we have streaming movies go there first, kind of like a film festival run, to see if it gets the word of mouth to then go into theaters. I'm not exactly sure, but I think
see this being in theaters now. and people going to it to be like, I
now
did
that it's
the
got
Snyder
the hype,
experience.
I want to see
and honestly,
it.
I probably would.
To see it
like,
the way that
why
it was
not?
shot. It is shot on IMAX,
Yeah, and
you know?
especially where you have seen it at home potentially. It doesn't matter if you need to dip for like a couple minutes. You're like, I know what's happening the next couple minutes. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going to get a refill. I'm going to do this or that. Like, it can be more of a fun experience, kind of like that the only people that are there are probably like really into it. So it would probably be a really fun theatrical experience because it's already done this streaming run. So that you're almost saving these theatrical experiences to be like that kind of fan experience. So
right.
yeah.
But we're also talking about this in like the re-release format, in like the re-release of the Lion King thing, where they're not looking for the type of money that's gonna bring home profits on this huge investment. The thing is, this was a huge investment for Warner Brothers in terms of trying to showcase the HBO Max service. And I think we can confidently say that this was the best weekend in HBO Max's history, even though we don't have the numbers. Just the amount of chatter around Snyder Cut, not just from the release the Snyder Cut portion of the internet, but the general internet, as people who I know in my personal life texted me about this and don't normally text me about superhero movies. This is a movie that resonated with people. And, if that is a new model for some of these platforms to, get eyes towards their streaming service, take a property that they've had before and find some way to make it new again, I could see more people trying to exploit that type of strategy.
Look at what Netflix did with The Irishman, right? Irishman didn't play at AMC's because not just of the length. Well, technically, when you begin, the studios didn't want to touch it because it was that long. And he said Netflix was the only one who would take it, and I could make it the way I wanted to. That's streaming. Then he gets a theatrical run, but it's only from the independent theaters. AMC wouldn't touch it because it's a Netflix movie. So do you think it's going to change the run times on a lot of these movies that we have because of streaming? Is the 90-minute movie dead, Zach?
No, I'm of two opinions on that, because I think it opens up the possibility for a lengthier cut, lengthier versions of films. If somebody really does want to make this 4-hour epic of a movie, it's more viable on streaming than theaters that not only have to get people to sit in their seat for 4 hours, but have to turn around and do multiple showings of a movie in order to get their profits. I could see it as a potential path for some of these streamers, but I also think bigger movies cost more money too. And at a certain point, I don't know if the cost benefit is worth letting every filmmaker make their 4-hour movie. Or maybe the idea is like make them make a show, or maybe for some people it's going to be like, well, I have this idea for a show, but what if it was a movie? So I don't know. I'm of two minds.
Yeah, I also run into the issue where sometimes, you're giving people a chance to like really deep dive into something, especially if you're recreating, like if you were adapting something to make sure you got everything from the adaptation so that it's there for the fans that want everything told the way it should be told. But then other times, some people do better with constraints. If you're just kind of like go crazy, make it as long as you want, that can be just as much of an issue. Obviously, the meddling with DC movies is a very different thing that more often than not completely shoots the movies in the foot. But I think that there are a lot of directors that probably work better under having certain types of constraints, and like the limitations are what make that greatness prevail. Whereas if it's just yes men everywheres, you're gonna lose something because you're not entering new ideas.
Yeah, that's where it could get interesting. We talked about it even in the Snyder Bracket episode that we did, where it's like BVS is a perfect example, in my opinion, on where the ultimate cut adds a lot more to it. Yet the unrated cut for Dawn of the Dead, I don't think it's better than the theatrical cut. I think it adds too much. It doesn't cut to the chase that the theatrical one does, and it doesn't have as much energy. So that's just from one director, same director doing it both ways, and seeing how it plays out.
Yeah, more isn't always better. Sometimes it's about the approach, but I think getting back to the idea of comparing these different cuts, it is really, really fascinating to be able to watch them side by side, see screenshots or scenes held up side by side, because we don't normally get to see what studio interference does so clearly. We hear about all these struggles that filmmakers have with studios battling over, I wanted to keep that scene, but we can see what WB took this vision and tried to turn it into something else. And it obviously became this gigantic mess of a movie in the Whedon cut. And even if I have my problems with Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's just so much more clearly from one vision, from one voice. And I think it's really interesting to see even the small ways, the changes to the CGI backgrounds. I tweeted something about the buildings, the different color grading, the replacement of the score, and all those ways where they take the exact same footage in some places and turn it into a really different movie.
It's all about how you deliver a joke, right? It's not just getting the punchline right. It's how you do the setup, how you deliver the entirety of it. I think that we're going to get into a point where when we were getting theatrical cuts, you would get the unrated version on DVD, right? It'd come with the unrated cut on it. That was like the big push for DVDs. I feel like not a reverse fabrication of it, but like now their new way is going to be able to push it for streaming. If every studio has their streaming service, a Universal movie can release its theatrical cut and then hype up that there will be an unrated version, make sure you have Peacock. Because I don't think that we're going to have another as big of a movement. Because the other one you said was trending was Aircut. No offense, but I don't think the Suicide Squad fans are out there as strong as the SnyderVerse fans were, right? And I don't see that being as easily, something that's going to be replicated. It's going to be something more like, Birds of Prey. I heard that there were scenes that they were cut. Those are known as deleted scenes. But I think that there will be a time where they're going to find a way to put it all back together. And on HBO, they'd be pushing the Birds of Prey, uncut whatever. Only find it here. It's already happened. The director's cut of Midsommar is only available on Apple TV. That's going to be the new way to do exclusives. All I'm seeing here is filmmakers and fans who believe we're going to be able to get this vision. And all you have is studios who are realizing that happened with HBO Max. I know we're all happy, but it was ka-ching for HBO Max, the same people who caused this problem to begin with. Yeah. Finding a way to still make money off of it and finding a way to put exclusivity on the finished project. It's not just the movie that was in theaters that got hype. It's the actual version of the movie that you can only find in one place. And that's by subscribing to Peacock. It's by subscribing to Netflix. It's by subscribing to Apple. That's the road I see us going down.
Right.
Technically already happening.
And that's the thing. It opens up the possibility to turn one piece of content and make it several pieces of content without doing a remake or doing a sequel. Yeah. Whenever something becomes successful, it inevitably raises the question of will there be more? Not only does Justice League have all new scenes teasing some post-apocalyptic future, SnyderCult is already hard at work getting hashtag restore the SnyderVerse trending. So Art, you think there's a world in which we get another Zack Snyder movie?
We're not doing this again. We're not doing this again. We spent 3 years going, it doesn't exist. It's coming. It's coming. We got one. How are we not getting the other? You don't invest $70 million into a movie that already had hundreds of millions into it. They know what's up next. You listen to this man talk. They just had a new the mini doc from HBO where he's talking about the making of. Oh, yeah. He's looking into that camera. He knows what's next. He got this. It's dominoes, baby. It's the rest is coming. People are watching this. They're giving it better reviews now. There's two more. It's set easily.
Yeah, this is oddly enough like the best thing that could have happened to his DC career, because I kind of feel like by the time Justice League was in the filming process, they were kind of looking for an exit strategy because a lot of people just were not resonating with his work in DC movies specifically. Obviously, a lot of people did. I'm not saying that it's completely devoid of merit. I'm just saying that there is
some revisionist history going on here, and that people are like, he left for personal reasons. It's also WB didn't want him to do the movie anymore.
Yeah, because they would have They could have waited.
They want to.
If they just used it very messed up as an opportunity to boot him.
And all those people are now fired. They're no longer working. So it's again that there's a lot of other different studio meddling.
They preyed on a tragedy.
So that's a different thing that happened with this movie, but nonetheless I still think that that's the road that it's going to go down, and I think they know what's going to happen. If someone's bothering you for money, if you give them $1, then they now know you have money. If you've given the fans what they want,
this was
they
the
know
hardest
they can
thing to get. This was the hardest thing to get.
This was the hurdle. The rest of it is easy.
Everything else is easy because at this point they know even the people that are still hate watching, they're going to hate watch the next one.
They're going to hate watch anyway.
And they're going to hate watch the one after that. So I think it's a done deal.
I mean, they had him filming stuff in the backyard, he said, so I'm sure at that point they're going to get it
That's
done
what
out of the way.
I don't know if I believe that story, but
No, he said eventually they filmed it. And he's holding the camera too for those extra scenes. I don't know.
He's the one not focusing perfectly on Jared Leto's
Leto's face. That was him. You see him in the behind the scenes. He's holding it like that. That he's like, all right,
that
cut.
could have been left out.
I think it needed more money and more time. I will say that. But it's, again, there because he's planning on extending it. He is leaving the little Easter eggs there to be like, hey, look at this. It's unfinished. Fight for it. Restore it. And I think it's coming.
Yeah.
I don't see how it's not.
Yeah. You know, I paid a little bit of attention to this whole GameStop story that's been in the news with its stock. And if you go onto Wall Street Bets, they're all trying to be like, what's the new GameStop? What's the next GameStop? And I think there isn't another GameStop and there isn't another Snyder Cut out there. You know, like the energy around Snyder in this movement is unique. And like you said, I don't think Ayer has that same energy. I don't think we're going to, get release whatever cut of whatever indie movie that we might want to see the director's vision restored on. This does feel like something unique in the film world, and while I agree, I don't think that energy is over. I do think it is unique to this path. And it's curious. He left enough breadcrumbs there that I think it's gonna just keep enticing people. If you see some of the interviews that he gave, he says WB didn't want him to add a lot of that stuff there. And I feel like they probably know if he's going to tease more material, people are going to ask for more material.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we will see what is in store for the future of the Justice League. Once again, make sure to check out Art's review over on Let Me Explain if you're looking for some more thoughts, and check out the rest of the Intercut podcast for our thoughts on South by Southwest and a whole bunch of other things. I wanted to hit up a quick new to see and just spotlight a couple of movies that we know are coming out. Because Art, I know you've been excited to talk about Nina Wu, which will be out this weekend.
So this is a movie that is absolutely insane. Caught it at SLIF, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Philly, one of the two film festivals that was doing the rounds about a woman who's trying really hard to become an actress, and all of the seedy underbelly of producers and all the crazy stuff that she needs to do. Not for the faint of heart, but it's got some beautiful cinematography. I think the performance by the lead is also fantastic. She goes all in with it. But again, it's a very tough watch, but one that it's up there. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Another thing that'll be out by this weekend that I know Amanda caught at least the first 3 episodes of is Invincible, based on the comic series with a whole bunch of famous voice actors attached to it, most notably Steve Yeun in the central
Oscar
role.
nominated.
Tell me what you thought about those first 3 episodes.
So those 3 episodes are what everybody's getting this week, and then they're doing episodic the same way they did with The Boys. I liked them. I've been a huge fan of the Invincible comic book for like a really long time. It's obviously over now, but I'm a huge fan of it. And I find that there's some issues with the animations. I do feel like they cheapened out in some areas where some things feel a little bit weird, but they commit to the brutality. They commit to what, they commit to what you know and expect. I personally wish that for the character designs, they had done a little bit more on the Ryan Otley side versus the Corey Walker side. So basically there's 2 different artists, and one picked up pretty early on in the series and took over. And I kind of wish they had gone more with that later artist, and maybe they'll switch to that too. But I think the Corey Walker stuff probably lends itself to the simplicity of what they're going for a little bit better in terms of how they can execute some of it. But I really liked it. There's a couple of voice actors that do feel a little bit awkward at times, but for the most part, I'm like really happy with everybody and how they play out. Like Steven Yeun's a great Mark Grayson. I'm enjoying it. It's basically. It's about this guy who basically he knows he's probably going to get superpowers eventually because his dad has superpowers, and his dad's an alien essentially, and so he's half alien. So it's basically just a matter of time theoretically before he starts getting the ability to fly, to have super strength, to essentially be invincible, which is the name.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's very vibrant and colorful, but still like one of those darker sides of a superhero story.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I enjoyed the first 3 episodes. Unlike the two of you, I hadn't read any of the comic, although I'm a little familiar with it. I think it's got that sort of subversive quality that The Boys has in taking the superhero tropes and inverting them and making them a little bit darker and asking, like, what would actually maybe happen with these superpowers. I like a lot of those qualities. I think maybe it is a little bit muted in some of the comedy elements of it. Like they try to do a Barry thing with the title, and it doesn't always work for me. But but it is fun. I really do like the voice performances in here, and I'm definitely going to check out more of it as it goes along. Art, I don't know if you caught any of it so far.
Just the first episode, but yeah, I'm excited to see where they take it.
Cool. And last pick for the week is one that'll pop up on Shudder shortly, but we talked about it more in our Sundance video. It's Violation, the really thrilling and viscerally upsetting story of rape and revenge. I definitely highly recommend this one for any horror fans, and the way that it tells its story in a really interesting way, giving you bits as it flashes back and forth through time, but also just the unflinching nature of its narrative and how it really holds on these uncomfortable, intense moments. A really solid horror movie. One of my standouts in terms of horror so far into 2021.
Solid.